Hi Year 6, so we're going to read the last part of chapter 10 today of The Book Above Pay Grade, The Boy with the Bronze Axe by Kathleen Fidler. And you might remember that so far in this chapter there's been a lot of things going on. Lokar has passed away, but he's left them with a prediction that something terrible is going to happen and that a storm is coming to Skara and that the actual village will vanish. Already we're in the middle of the storm right now, and Bruno and Tenko and Stempsy and Callie and Brocken are all trying to escape their hut as it is falling to pieces and being covered slowly by sand. They're just on their way out, and as we finished the last chapter, Callie had just got her beads caught on something and she was being choked as Tenko was trying to pull her out from the hut. We'll find out what happens next now. Tenko turned round, made a grab in the darkness and caught hold of the string of bone beads. He wrenched them apart and they went cascading to the ground. Callie was freed. "Oh, my necklace! You gave it to me!" Callie cried, scooping up all of the beads. Tenko jerked her roughly to her feet. "Come on, Callie, there is no time. Quick, along the passage before it is filled with sand. If you stop for your beads, you will be buried alive with them." He pushed her along before him. They had barely gone a few paces when there was a roar and the banked up sand crashed down and into the hut. Gasping and spluttering, spitting out sand, the family crawled on their hands and knees through the main passage and along to the meeting place. This was open to the sky and was already knee-deep in sand. The folk were there trying to fight their way back to the huts to try and get some shelter. "Out, out!" Bruno cried. "Get out of your houses or the sand will bury you." He drove them before him like a flock of sheep. They struggled out onto the shifting, billowing sand dunes. "Oh, where shall we go? What will we do?" Stempsy cried. In the darkness and the sandstorm, all was confusion. "Keep hold of each other's arms," Bruno cried. "Do not let go. We will pull each other up if we stumble." Lemba hooked his arm onto Brocken's. It was difficult to know where they were in all of the turmoil of land and sea. Tenko thought quickly. "I know a place where we might be safe," he cried. "Keep heading into the wind. Do not turn your backs on it. Above all, hold on to each other." Tenko knew that so long as they kept their faces to the wind, they would be heading westward, and sooner or later they would encounter some landmark. "No, no," Tresco cried. "We must turn our backs on the wind and run before it. That stupid lad knows nothing. He will lead you to your death and into the sea. Every man for himself. Now run!" Most of the tribe of Skara obeyed him, for it was easier to turn their backs than to face the stinging, lashing sand in the wind. The minute they left the sight of shelter of the huts, the wind took those who were not holding on to each other and who had turned their backs to it. It bowled them over, lifting them bodily off their feet. It rolled them over and over like a ball. Singly, there was no standing against it. Like spindrift, they were borne before it. The old and the children soon fell and were unable to rise again. The sand fell thickly upon them. Soon they were suffocated by it. They lay there, strange mounds and shrouded forms on the ground. The sand blew over them and covered them like snow. Clinging desperately to each other, Bruno's family and Lemba fought their way to the teeth of the storm, bending towards the wind. Their feet sank deep into the sand drifts. It was like struggling through a bog. At last they reached a rocky hollow in the lee of a small hill. "Let us stop here and catch our breath," Bruno said. Breathing hard, they struggled to clear their mouths and their eyes of sand. "Shall we stay here?" Lemba suggested. "We could lie down here." "No." Tenko pointed at the layer of sand which had already drifted into the hollow. "A shift in the wind and we should all be covered as we lay there. No, we must push on." Bruno remembered what Lokar had said about trusting and obeying Tenko when the doom fell upon Skara. "We will do as Tenko says. We will push on," he said. There came another lull in the tempest. "Let us go now while the wind has dropped," Tenko urged. They plodded on, linked together by their arms. Bruno and Lemba at the end of each line, Tenko thrusting forward in the middle like the point of an arrow, with Callie, Stempsy and Brocken on each side. All at once, their feet began to move on a slope downhill. The wind seemed to whistle more overhead, and the sting of the sand was not so cutting. Feel carefully with your feet now, Tenko advised them. Hardly were the words out of his mouth than he slipped himself, dragging the others with him. From below came the sound of running water. They slipped their feet at first down a steeply sloping bank, and they fell into shallow, muddy water at his foot. "Oh, where are we now?" Stempsy cried in terror. Tenko let out a shout of joy. "We found it! We found it! Do not fear, Stempsy. This is the place I sought." "Where are we?" Callie asked. "This is the stream of Skara." "But the sand is blowing up the stream, filling the space between the banks like a snowdrift," Bruno said doubtfully. "If we stay here, it could bury us." "We will not stay. Keep hold of each other and wade up the stream," Tenko said. "It is shallow, but there are 1 or 2 pools into which you might fall." They made a human chain, with Tenko leading them. Mercifully, the wind eased a little. Tenko felt his way amongst the boulders of the stream, putting down a cautious foot whenever he thought a pool might lie before them. Sometimes they were up to their waists in water. Sometimes the stream barely covered their ankles. The worst danger was the drifted sand, which had sunk to the bottom of the stream and clogged their feet. The wind began to rise again. The banks of the stream had grown shallower, and once more the stinging sand beat upon them. "Perhaps we could find shelter, more shelter, lower down the stream," Bruno was beginning, when the moon appeared for a minute from behind a thick cloud, and light filtered through the sandstorm. Tenko gave a cry of relief. "There it is! The rock where the stream bends." A large rock loomed up in their way. The wind almost blew them into it. Tenko pressed on around it, and suddenly the wind seemed to have left them. The stream had taken a complete right-angled bend around the rock. "This is the place I wanted to find," Tenko gasped. The stream came tumbling down from the hill of Yetna above, cutting deep banks. These banks lay at opposite points of the compass from the direction of the wind. The wind went howling past the bend of the stream, leaving them in an oasis of comparative calm where the rock jutted out. The bank behind it curved around a rocky pool. "Keep close to the rock," Tenko warned them. "The pool below this is deep." They found a flat stone where they could all sit in the lee of the great rock, sheltered from the storm and the driving sand. For a few minutes they did not speak from sheer exhaustion. Then Bruno asked, "How did you know of this place, Tenko?" "I came to try and get a fish in this deep pool last summer. While I was here, a rainstorm blew up out of the west. The rock sheltered me until it was over. I remembered it when we fled from Skara. I thought it might give us shelter now." They sat huddled together, waiting for the dawn to break. That's the end of chapter 10. So there's no questions in this chapter because we want to just get to the end of the book before the end of the term. Chapter 11 is the last chapter. Miss Hill's going to read you chapter 11. We'll find out whether they survive and what happens next to the village of Skara. Hopefully they'll all get away and may be able to rebuild their life somewhere else.